This is going to hurt. I already know.
I'm here before the end.
I will keep
How are you? I just wanted to check. I wanted to check in with you about because I didn't know what's going on. You know what? I don't think this thing has a log, but I just figured there were things that would prompted it, right? Which is good. But
Good afternoon, everyone. Please get your sandwiches and come on in. I'm Lisa Mensa. I'm the Executive Director of the Aspen Institute's Initiative on Financial Security, and I want to welcome you here today to our luncheon briefing, your nest egg on autopilot. You are in the right briefing here, not the Toyota folks, that's somewhere else. So, although we will talk a lot about savings vehicles today. So I am hoping that as I dance a little bit, Mark Avery will show up, our Senior Advisor and Deputy Assistant Secretary. But I want to go ahead and get started with some thank yous and some introductions. So my first thanks is to Senator Cole, who is the chair of the Senate Aging Committee and a tireless supporter of the desire to have all Americans have a secure retirement. And Deb Whitman and Jeff Cruz are here today, who we really have a huge thank you, because with you we have the ability to do this briefing. So thank you very much, and to Senator Cole as well. All of you who have come to these kind of briefings before know that in addition to sandwiches and apples, which you can always count on being standard, the real quality here is who joins you on your panel. And we are really blessed today to just have some powerful voices. So this is a briefing that, the briefing of my dreams, and I am just so glad we have the group. So let me say a few words. I'll start to say a few words about Mark, who's not here. Mark is the Deputy Assistant Secretary under Treasury Secretary Tim Geithner. And he's responsible for retirement and healthcare, so that's why his day is rather busy. And in his retirement side, he's working on executive compensation, pensions, retirement savings, and healthcare. He had a prior life as a thinker, and that's why we have the automatic IRA proposal. So Mark is the perfect person to join us today. To my right is Nancy Register. Nancy's the Associate Director of the Consumer Federation of America. She is also the National Director for CFA's Social Marketing and Wealth Building campaign, America Saves. America Saves encourages low-income households to save, reduce debt, and build wealth. I consider Nancy to be one of the true architects of the America Saves campaign, and as she will tell you, we are here on America Saves Week. So happy America Saves Week, a very appropriate briefing to be at. So thank you, Nancy, for joining us. To my left is Christina Martin-Fervita. Christina is the Director of Economic Security for Government Relations and Advocacy at AARP, at AARP. Really, we are so pleased to have AARP with us, an organization that more than any organization takes seriously the needs of Americans' retirement, and we could not be more appreciative of your. Christina's portfolio includes directing the Association's federal and state advocacy on Social Security, pensions, retirement savings, and all other aspects of retirement financial security. So we've got the best. And at AARP, that's saying a lot. Next to Christina is Dr. Lou Mandel. Lou serves as the senior fellow with us at the Aspen Institute. When he's not with us, he is a professor, visiting professor at the University of Washington in the area of finance and Managerial Economics. These were courses I struggled with. I don't know about you. But Lou will make it all perfectly clear and has promised to keep the pointer to a minimum, and you'll walk out of here feeling like you didn't have to take his course. And finally, to Lou's left is John Tippett. John is currently the CEO of the North Island Credit Union in San Diego, after having served as the president of American Airlines. And John is one of the most, I'm always promoting people. I'm sure American Airlines would be in a better state if John had been the CEO there. But he was the CEO of American Airlines Federal Credit Union from 1991 to 2007. John, welcome. John's also a special designation is he's one of our founding advisory board members. So John has walked with me for the long haul, and I'm just so pleased to have you back with us, John. This is an audience of many friends and many people I respect. A few shout-outs. We have with us Jamie Calamaritas, the Senior Vice President of Prudential. And as most of you know, at IFS, we have such a deep respect for the financial industry's capacity to really deliver our financial security and a practical desire to have them with us. We're also pleased to be having this event on the week of the Credit Union National Association's big meeting, and pleased to see Diana Dykstra of the San Francisco Fire Credit Union and Jim Blaine of the North Carolina State Employees Credit Union. So thank you for those financial institutions. And welcome, Mark. So I am going to give you a few overview comments and then try to get out of the way and let others. So this is the time when you should be eating, crinkling napkins, and you can ignore me every other third word. But very thrilled to start this topic today because we really feel that by proposing automatic IRAs and an expanded savers credit, we're at a huge moment of breakthrough in our retirement policy system. So this topic of putting your nest egg on autopilot, which is part of the administration's proposals for a savers credit and automatic IRA system, is really tackling, I want to talk about three problems that these proposals tackle. And they've been problems that have been festering in our retirement system for over 35 years. The first two, getting more people to save and getting low and moderate incomes a financial incentive to reward their savings. Those are the first big problems that these new policies tackle. By saying you want to automate your retirement savings, you're taking a big whack at this first huge challenge, which is how do we get America to save. If the proposal proposed would do the largest expansion of our private retirement pension system since ERISA was passed in 1974. And it promises to give workers of small and medium-sized employers who've never been well covered by the current system easy access to a savings plan. So this first goal is really about getting more people in, getting more people to save. The refundable savers credit, the other proposition that we've been talking about when you put your nest egg on autopilot, that's a refundable tax credit to your accounts that gives these workers a financial boost for their savings and helps them build financial assets more quickly. And this is particularly important in an era when employers, especially the smallest employers, can't provide generous retirement matching dollars. So we really have two big ideas happening that address these festering problems. How do we get more people to save, and what's the real incentive, particularly for low and moderate income people? Mostly this has been talked about as a small employer policy, but there are plenty of workers, self-employed workers, who are outside of this automatic system, but who could also benefit if we simplify the IRA system. And I'm talking about the cab drivers, the daycare workers, the dry cleaners, the mom and pop stores who aren't going to be captured directly, but would benefit if we could simplify the IRA system and also reward it with an expanded savers credit. I promised you 3 points, so my third point is really what we want to get into today. And because this is a moment when the architecture of our next savings system is really being decided, this is a time when we're going to address this festering problem of the real guts, the real engine of savings vehicles. And that's what our IFS work has been devoted to in recent days. It's a moment to say not only just who's covered and what their match is, what are they investing in? If we're defaulting everybody, what's the default? And that's why we plastered you with paper about what this could be. The thing we are talking about today at IFS is the notion that we ought to give people a robust investment option that gives them both security and upside. And that's Real Savings Plus. That's what you have in your packets. That's the idea that we hope will be debated as part of this notion of expanding the automatic IRA and expanding the savers credit. We really think it's the moment to look at these questions of how robust, what is the thing that we're putting into play, and how can the private sector actually deliver it? We think there is a way to have a win here with a private-public partnership. So the results of our research is a new investment product called Real Savings Plus, and we think it can actually deliver a pretty strong nest egg. So I brought my favorite poster of my time at IFS. I'm in love with this golden egg here. And I want to draw one stat here, which is what a real nest egg could reach using our RS Plus after 40 years of saving $1,000 a year. And it's $500,223,405, $500,000. That's a number that seems so vastly out of reach. It is 10 times the size of many 401k balances. And yet we feel that by putting your nest egg on autopilot, that the diligent saving of 40 years can reach this. And it's not with huge sums. You'll hear more about that from some of our speakers. This is a model that says even if you're saving $1,000 a year, and if you're not doing the math real quick, what would that look like? Well, with the savers credit, that's $30 a paycheck. And it's saying that would get you up around $700. You get a 50% match with a savers credit. You could make that $1,000 a year. And so even on autopilot, you're getting to a substantial nest egg. Our feeling at IFS is that everyone will need a nest egg, that everyone will need a complement to the vital base of our retirement system, which is Social Security, but everyone will need a nest egg. And that the question before us today is how we build that in a way that's robust, simple, and adequate. So those are the questions today in front of us. I promised you I would stop. And I am going to turn this table over first to Mark Avery. And Mark, while you're coming up, I think you would agree to have a few questions afterwards. I don't know when your hook time will come, but we're just very thankful to have you with us. Come on up.
Thanks, Elisa. I'm happy to be here, as always, and you've arranged another really terrific program with as much talent, knowledge, and experience collected on this side as on this side, and hopefully we can all benefit from that in the next little while. I'll set the stage in an additional way, if it makes sense to you, by just giving people the framework for this automatic IRA and savers credit pair of proposals, which many of you are well familiar with, but others perhaps not. The problem, as Lisa said, is in large part that we've got half our working population without access to an employer plan, or at least close to half, and we've been stagnating at that level, as you know, for decades. We are looking for a breakthrough, and one that is realistic, enactable, and effective. The IRA, of course, is supposed to fill the gap for the population who don't have employer plans available to them, but it's only gone so far. Something like 1 out of 10, or fewer than 1 out of 10, people who are eligible to make tax-favored contributions to an IRA, be it Roth or traditional, actually do so in any given year. The reason that we don't have more take-up seems to be in large part that decisions have to be made, initiative has to be taken, people have to open an IRA, which financial institution will I choose for my IRA, how does it work, which type of IRA do I establish how do I invest in the IRA, when am I going to find the time to go down to the bank or insurance company, brokerage firm, mutual fund, credit union, and open up the IRA, fill out the paperwork or what have you. People are not finding it easy enough. By contrast, in the 401k world, where the saving occurs by payroll deposit, it's much easier. Once the payroll deductions begin, they automatically keep coming out of your paycheck, and you set it and forget it, as the phrase goes. That has a take-up of something like 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 of those who are eligible. Works pretty well. When you add automatic enrollment or opt-out to that, in other words, letting employees participate automatically in the 401k unless they affirmatively choose to opt out of it, the take-up rate goes up to 9 out of 10, 9.5 out of 10, in that range. The automatic IRA proposal's designed to simply take these basic building blocks in our existing system, which we've seen work pretty effectively. Payroll deposit savings gets that take-up rate up from 1 out of 10 to 7 or 8 out of 10. Automatic enrollment, which gets it up to 9 or 9.5 out of 10. And then thirdly, that IRA, which is a well-established, familiar saving vehicle that's tax-favored in much the same way as the 401k plan. You put those three basic blocks together, and you don't have to create a very elaborate new structure. We can get most of the population who don't have access to an employer plan the same kind of tax-favored, easy, convenient saving mechanism that those of us who are in a 401k or similar plan have. The small employer, which is the one typically that hasn't adopted a plan, would be asked to make that payroll deposit system available in much the same way that a business forwards people's paychecks by direct deposit to their financial account if the employees want that done in millions of workplaces. The employer wouldn't be contributing, it wouldn't be sponsoring a plan, it would really just be linking the individual and their paycheck to an IRA in much the same way that the employer simply links your paycheck to your financial account if you want it directly deposited there. And the employer would have no out-of-pocket or outlay type of cost. They wouldn't be contributing the way a 401k sponsor might contribute a match, partly because we want to minimize any issues or burdens for small employers. This is simply a task on the small employer's to-do list, if you will. Add to the various payroll withholdings that you're now doing for federal income tax, state income tax, unemployment insurance, etc., FICA, FUTA. Add one more and make it voluntary for the employee. If the employee wants to opt out, they opt out. If they want to save a higher percentage than the automatic enrollment percentage, which would be something probably like 3%, something modest to start with, and potentially something that could increase or escalate over time, the employee could choose that different percentage or opting out entirely. If the employer sponsors a plan, a 401k, a simple, a defined benefit, any kind of retirement plan, it's not subject to this arrangement. But an employer that doesn't sponsor a plan is simply being asked to let employees use as a conduit or a forwarding device the employer's payroll system. For that, the employer would get a tax credit, a small one, designed to be smaller than the tax credit that small businesses get if they choose to adopt an employer plan. And that is consistent with the thrust of this proposal, which is to be supportive of the employer plan system. That is, to do whatever is possible to promote more employer plans as the top priority here. But for small employers that are not willing or ready to do that, at least give their employees the ability to save in a convenient, automatic way in these payroll deposit IRAs. Employer would not have any investment decision-making, no responsibility for that, but would be able to link up to a private sector IRA that the employer might choose for all the employees in at their workplace. If the employer does business with an IRA provider, has a financial partner, what have you, or is marketed by one, that's how they could pair up. If the employer wants no part of that decision and just wants to be done with this in the most expeditious way possible, there would be some alternative. People here and in the financial services community have suggested alternatives for employers that don't want to choose or aren't fortunate enough to link up with a particular private sector IRA provider. They've suggested retirement bonds, a savings bond that the Treasury might institute, similar to the savings bonds that are now in existence, but more user-friendly and tailored to this retirement purpose. And that's one way there might be a fallback to ensure that every employer has an easy place to go. Another alternative that people have been discussing is what they do in New Zealand: invite financial institutions that are interested in doing so to be a kind of fallback pool of IRA providers for any employer that doesn't link up to a particular IRA provider, a kind of consortium of providers that are willing to take all comers up to some number of IRAs. The tax credit for employer plans, that is, establishment of a 401k, a simple defined benefit, a profit-sharing plan, we're proposing as part of the President's budget proposal to double in conjunction with the automatic IRA proposal in order to underscore and re-emphasize that the purpose here is to promote retirement savings coverage broadly and to support, enhance, expand the employer plan system first and foremost, and only as a second choice, if that small employer isn't willing to adopt a plan, then have them make their employees the quick and easy conduit, make that available to their employees of their payroll system to an IRA. The level of contributions in an automatic IRA is the IRA level, $5,000 a year. No employer contributions, just employee contributions, $6,000 if someone's 50 or older, compared to the 401k, $16,500, $22,000 if they're 50 or older, and up to $49,000 if you add employer matching or non-matching contributions in. There's really little comparison in terms of the potential incentive for a small business owner who wants to put away a substantial amount of income on a tax-favored basis. And that's as we want it to be. They should have all the incentives to adopt an employer plan and limit this alternative to a pure fallback that does not in any way threaten the employer plan system. Lisa mentioned the companion Savers Credit enhancement. This is a tax credit, as most of you know, under current law, and Bill Sweetnam, who's here, had a lot to do with getting this enacted with his boss, the late distinguished Chairman Roth of the Senate Finance Committee, as did the current chairman, Senator Baucus. And the Savers Credit is designed to, in a sense, level the playing field for lower and moderate income people when it comes to the tax expenditure, tax preference for saving. When many of us save in 401ks or IRAs, we get a tax benefit, tax savings proportional to our bracket. High bracket people get the biggest deduction or exclusion from tax, therefore the most benefit. Low bracket people, people in the 15% That's not low, that's really the most common, 10% or 0% bracket. And those three together comprise the clear majority of Americans. People in those brackets get only 15 cents, 10 cents, or 0 cents on the dollar for tax-favored saving. So Savers Credit is designed to make saving incentives proportional not to how high your income is, therefore how high your tax bracket is, but proportional to how much you save. That's the thing we're trying to incent, after all. So the Savers Credit now provides a tax credit, a certain amount, in proportion to the amount that you save, for people up to a certain income level, $55,500 right now, cost of living adjusted. The proposal is to increase the Savers Credit in various ways. First, make it refundable so that people who don't have an income tax liability will be able to get this incentive, to get a match, deposited if possible to the account, the IRA or the 401k in which the person saves, if that's administratively feasible, so that it looks like an employer match in a 401k plan. Make it a 50% credit across the board. So if you save $1, you get 50 cents, and raise the eligibility threshold to $65,000 a year for married couples filing jointly, and correspondingly higher for unmarried folks. Those are the two basic proposals in the President's budget that have broad sweep to try to pursue the goal of universal or approaching universal coverage. And what Aspen has suggested is an intriguing potential feature to make this work better. So look forward to the discussion. I'm happy, Lisa, to take questions either now or later if that would be better.
We'll break a little bit, because I think just hearing a little bit, so stay at the podium, because I think this is the only mic we've got. So.
Great.
So let's break for a few minutes, and while Mark is right here, you've heard him describe both the Savers Credit and the proposed automatic IRA. So, questions?
Yes.
Hi, Mark. This is Camille Bisa from Irwin. I wanted to find out, particularly for the Savers Tax Credit, and given the fact that it's so focused on low-income people, what do you believe are the barriers to adoption, and what are your proposals for basically eliminating those barriers going forward?
For the Savers Credit?
Yeah.
And when you say adoption, you mean enactment or use of it by?
Use of it, people. So that people are actually going to keep the money in there.
The Savers Credit is very easy to use. What we need to do is get people to save. Once they make a contribution to a 401k, a 403b, an IRA, the Savers Credit can be claimed on their return. If they're using a tax preparer, they will usually make sure that that Savers Credit gets claimed. Right now, for example, H&R Block does about $1 million a year Savers Credits, which some of those people might not otherwise notice. Your question is very well taken, in part because we know that a chunk of the people who are eligible don't take the Savers Credit, a very large percentage, just not aware of it. And so raising consciousness would help getting this enacted, this expansion of the Savers Credit, refundability, a 50% across the board rate, raising the eligibility threshold to cover more of the middle class, hopefully depositing it in the account where the person saved so that the credit itself is automatically being saved. That should help raise the profile and make it all much more conspicuous. Right now, we're just under 6 million of people a year who use it. And that is something that obviously we could multiply by a large factor with these changes. Yes? Hi.
And I wanted to ask about the other part of the question which wasn't asked, which is the barriers to enactment. In the past, a lot of people have raised the possibility of making the Savers Credit refundable, so it would be an effective incentive for lower and moderate income savers. But one of the main barriers that's inside of the past is the cost. And just, if you could speak a little bit to the likelihood of both of these pieces of legislation getting through together.
Well, yeah, Amy's question was about the likelihood or the barriers to enactment and including the cost of the Savers Credit and for that matter, the automatic IRA. The cost of the Savers Credit has been estimated by Treasury in its fully expanded form as proposed, to be about $3 billion a year for the 10-year period, so about $30 billion over 10. And when you compare that to the current amount that we spend for tax-favored retirement saving, which is north of $100 billion a year, it would be money very well spent. We'd be adding a meaningful amount to the total system just in the place where we need it the most. I know some of us who've been working with the system for many years now are troubled occasionally when we hear people raise the possibility that perhaps we ought to eliminate the system we have as opposed to improving it and reforming it. That the tax expenditure we are devoting to savings isn't worth the candle and that we ought to scrap it. This is taking the opposite approach. This is saying that to further justify the effectiveness, the bang for the buck for the taxpayer of the $100 and some billion we're spending every year, we need to add a carefully targeted additional amount for the majority of the population, the people who need the incentive the most, rather than targeting our tax expenditure disproportionately to the people who really need the incentive the least. So this is an add-on. This would not replace. This would add to, augment, and improve the existing tax expenditure, and therefore I think it would be a very wise investment. The automatic IRA, separate proposal, is estimated by us to cost about $1 billion a year over 10 years. A fairly modest amount compared to the potential, as Lisa put it, breakthrough that this could bring about in our retirement savings system. Questions, comments, suggestions? Yes?
I just have one other question about the auto IRA, and that is particularly your suggestion that small businesses who do not have an IRA, who simply just act as a conduit, like they do for all kinds of other withholdings. My question there is, how do you get employees who are employed there to over the hurdle of actually selecting the IRA, which is something that you mentioned earlier?
Right. Default. As long as we make it automatic, we can get employees over the hurdle of decision-making the same way we have with 401ks. With 401ks, we've taken the required burden of decision-making out of it for employees who have automatic enrollment. Yet we've left them the freedom of choice. They want a different kind, different level, different investment, what have you, opt out entirely, they're free to do so. We're simply borrowing that extremely successful model and very bipartisanly attractive, a model that's appealed to people on both sides of the aisle. The Pension Protection Act's 401k provisions that further promoted automatic enrollment, building on the Treasury and IRS guidance over the past 11, 12 years now. That's been very bipartisan, and this whole approach has been developed and advanced in that spirit. My co-author from before I was back in government, David John at the Heritage Foundation, and I worked this up very much in a consciously cross-ideological or non-ideological bipartisan way, and we've been delighted that it has to date been fortunate enough to have that kind of bipartisan interest.
Thank you, Mark. So we're going to hope that the blessing of bipartisanship sticks with us, and we'll have more time to come back to this question. I want to invite Nancy Register up to make a few more comments. And those of you who would prefer to sit, there are those horrible front row seats, so come join us. Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks, Lisa. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm delighted to be here, and my role, I think, today is to fill in this portrait of the need for more accessible, more automatic, more available retirement savings products to the low to moderate income households in this country. For those of you who aren't familiar with America Saves, it's a national social marketing campaign that encourages folks to save money, reduce debt, and build wealth. In the interest of full disclosure, Lisa, at her Ford Foundation days, was one of the early funders and actual founders of the America Saves campaign, along with Steve Brobeck, the executive director of CFA. Now, social marketing really does not have a whole lot of skin in the policy game as far as America Saves is concerned. However, on a more general basis, one of the concepts of social marketing is that policy often helps promote the behavior change that you are trying to create. And think about the drunk driving laws that have helped reduce drunk driving. Think about the no smoking ordinances at the municipal level that have curbed smoking in cities around the country. And think about the drug alcohol levels, blood alcohol levels, that have also helped contribute to the enforcement of drunk driving laws. So policy is a real important part of behavior change. And what really I think I have to add to this conversation today is, what is the demand for what we're trying to do? What is happening on the ground, and what are people actually saying when you talk to them about what helps them to save, what helps them to save for retirement, and how they get to that point where they think that saving is important? Well, I have a couple of statistics. What good presentation in this city wouldn't be complete without some data and some research. America Saves, and this week, and thank you, Lisa, for mentioning, this week is America Saves Week. It's an annual chance for everybody to assess their saving and take some financial action, because we know that financial education is important. But what has to be in place in order for behavior to change? Well, information is necessary. But how many of you have taken a class where you have not been motivated to change your behavior at all? Most of us. So motivation has to be there. And you can be motivated and informed, but what happens if you don't have that opportunity to change your behavior? So there has to be access or opportunity to make the behavior change that you want to occur. So what we're talking about here is ways to promote people to take financial action. America Saves really was more involved in short and medium-term savings behavior until we partnered with ASEC and EBRI to bring in the retirement saving. And so for our survey this year for America Saves Week, we included retirement questions in there. And I think it's important for you all to know what people say they're doing about retirement saving. And this was done just earlier this month. So the question was asked, are you saving for retirement? Most think they are. As a matter of fact, most of them think they're saving adequately for retirement. There are two classes or two parts of the community that do not, however. One is those with an income of $25,000 or less, and only 25% say they're saving for retirement. And also those who have not completed high school. Only 17 folks who have not completed high school say they're saving for retirement. We ask another question. Are you participating in a 401k or other plan at work? The answer, the positive answer, rose with the income level. Again, those making $25,000 or less, 15% of them only said they were. And those who had not completed high school, only 19% said they were. More troubling, those who made 25 to 50%, only 38 said they were contributing at work, which is which is alarming to those of us who are trying to get people in the habit of saving. More basic than are you saving for retirement is, are you saving at all? Have you started to save? Are you saving for that emergency fund? Are you saving for those expenses that you know are coming, don't know what they are, but if you don't have the savings account or the money in the bank to save for them, you will have to put them on your credit card or take out high-cost loans in order to meet them, and even more seriously, take out the usurious payday and car title loans that we know are proliferating around the country. So the question is, are you saving automatically, and are you saving at all? 24% of those making under $25,000 said that they were saving by auto transfers. 59% making $100,000 or more said they were. The household income size has quite a bit to do with whether or not people are saving automatically. It goes from 38 to 43% from the lowest to the highest. And those with children, 49% say they're saving automatically. And those with the highest education who have completed college, 48% say they're saving automatically, but only 21% who have not completed high school say that they're saving automatically. We know, however, through our work with America Saves, and we have over 200 or close to 200,000 savers now, thankfully, since the campaign has started, we know that what we hear from them, and we profile savers every quarter in our newsletter, the one startling point that occurs in all of these profiles is the ability to save automatically. So when you think about this auto IRA, anything that has to do with policy and something that is promoted for universal service really has to have, for successful saving, an automatic saving component. Take Valeria Johnson in Florida. She was living paycheck to paycheck. She said she started small. She had an automatic deposit amount taken out of her paycheck every month, and when she got a raise, that was automatically deposited into her savings account. Take Billy Johnson here in D.C. He had 80 pairs of sneakers, which represented $10,000 worth of money sitting in his closet. When he decided that he needed to save, he signed up for an IDA program, and now 5% of his paycheck automatically goes to saving. And take Eric Weber. He was a hospital corpsman in the Army, and he discovered military saves, and now he's encouraging other military personnel to save, and he is telling everybody to have an automatic saving deposit from checking to their savings account, or to take advantage of saving automatically in the TSP. And finally, Ivan Bueno-Rostro from Arizona. He was a student, and he was drowning in his credit card debt. The first thing he had to do was get out of debt. And as soon as he graduated, he has now gone into direct savings with his first job. So this is what we're hearing from people, that the automatic nature of whatever product, the policy folks and those of you who are concerned about what the government is offering and what can be done legislatively, we believe that the auto component of this is really one of the most important. We've also done some more research on saving and automatic saving, and CFA just recently announced a collaboration with the Financial Services Roundtable to promote automatic saving with the banks that are members of that organization. And what we found there, and I'll end with these three things because I think these are the three components that we really have to think about in order for the low to moderate income household to save successfully. First of all, the large majority of households believe that the most effective way, as I've said, to save is to save automatically with an automatic transfer of funds from paycheck or checking. So first of all, it's the behavior that they want to institute that we have to incent. The second is marketing. You know, build it and they will come didn't work in the movie. It's not going to work here unless we market the availability and the right messengers market the availability of these products to the general public. That includes the government, it includes the private sector. It's got to be a private-public partnership in here. If you don't tell people about it, it's just not going to happen. And this is one of the things that happens during tax time. America Saves promotes savings during tax time. It's the devil's own chore to get people to want to save when they're getting their taxes prepared by a preparer. Very few in our survey say that they think about saving during tax time. That's got to change. We know that we have to promote the use of saving through the EITC and the Saver Credit as well. 70% also of the folks that we surveyed, 78%, also think that if banks and credit unions made it a priority to promote and offer incentives, it would help families to save more effectively. It's not just about changing individual behavior, it's about changing institutional behavior, and every organization has a role to play in the financial stability, the financial security of their employees, their constituents, their members, their congregants. And finally, accessibility. 69% said that it would be more favorable to them, or they would be more likely to take advantage of an account like this or an opportunity to save if banks would make it more accessible to the low to moderate income household, and that is to reduce minimum balances and waive fees. So when you think about corresponding attributes of your retirement savings, you really need to think about making it accessible to the low to moderate income household. And finally, I just want to tell you what people tell us they're saving for. And I thought it would be interesting for you to know that 200,000 of folks here in this country, 23% say they're saving for an emergency fund. That is the top goal of America's savers, period, has been across the years. 15%, and this is in 2010, say they're saving to pay down debt. 17%, which is up 5% from 2006, say they're saving for education. Only 8% say they're saving for retirement. That's held true for the last 3 years about. 7% say they're investing, and this year only 5.6% say they're saving for home ownership. That's kind of interesting because in 2008 it was 11%, and in 2006 it was 13%. So the way folks are investing and saving for the future and what they're doing is changing, and I'm very happy to discuss what America Saves is doing to help promote the saving, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Nancy.
Lou, please join us. All right, so you've heard a picture of demand, what consumers want, and Lou is our other designer and architect of this question of simple investing made simple. So,
okay. Thank you, Lisa. It's when I stand in front of a class every morning at 8:30, my students feel it's time to start texting to their friends. So I tend to ignore these things, but hopefully we'll learn something because there will be a test at the end. Now, both Mark and Nancy have said that it's very difficult for Americans to save, particularly difficult for folks who are not highly educated, who don't have a lot of income to save, and that maybe the most promising way to get people to save the money that they really need is to do it automatically. There are a lot of folks out these days who seem to feel that there may be another answer to the question, and that is to educate consumers, that financial literacy education is the answer to all of these questions, and we don't have to worry about it past then. As someone who's been in the financial literacy movement since we named it financial literacy, we're talking more than 15 years, what we found, and not just my own research, but the research of many other very good scholars, is that education doesn't seem to work. No one has ever shown that education really makes people more literate, makes them able to make better decisions, makes them more likely to save. So we have to basically say, okay, if there's no silver bullet in terms of education, what else can we do? Our research has shown we did 6 national studies starting in 1997 of high school students, and those who've had a full semester course in financial education ended up knowing no more than those who had not had a course. The same thing in 2008, the same thing happened with college students. I was able to, a couple of years ago, do a white paper for New America Foundation where we found that workplace education really doesn't tend to work. The people who are attracted to it are the people who loved being in class, who stayed in school, who got college educations, and now if an employer offers something on how do you invest your 401k, guess who shows up? It's the 25% of the population who are educated, who are already saving. Why do they show up? They are fine-tuners. They're not showing up because they're there to learn something basic. And the 75% who really do not have the advantage of a college education, those folks don't like school, most of them, or many of them, and they don't tend to seek out this type of education. So it's very difficult to reach people. So to reach a goal that people will tell you invariably that they want. If you ask people, should you be saving more? Do you wish that you were saving more? Yes. Do you expect to save more? Yes. And then they'll come back, when do you expect to start saving? Oh, within the next year. They'll come back a year later. There has been no change in behavior. So to reach a goal that people really want to reach but can't seem to accomplish on their own, then we need to, I think, this is my own personal opinion, I think we really need to help them. And behavioral economists suggest that the way to do it is put it on autopilot, to achieve goals without continuous decision making. People don't know enough to make complex decisions. They're worried that they're going to be cross-sold by various salespeople. And even if they really want to do it, they just don't seem to motivate themselves very much, as Mark said. Now, we've been working on the innards of an auto IRA plan. In other words, if we're fortunate enough to get an auto IRA, and I certainly hope that we are, what should it look like, and what will be in the best interest of the workers? And if you think about it, you would say, okay, we're designing this for, particularly for folks of low and moderate incomes, it should be relatively low risk. People without a lot of money are very risk averse, and they're very risk averse for a good reason. They don't have an awful lot to lose. Every cent that they lose is very important to them. Secondly, it should be very, very simple. It should be very easy for people to understand. Third, it should be extremely inexpensive. And by inexpensive, it should be very inexpensive to the workers who really need to keep almost all of their earnings. And in this environment, it should be very inexpensive for the government as well. And here's a really major point, and Lisa alluded to it before with this graph over here, it needs to offer workers the opportunity to grow their money to the point where they can reach a nest egg that would allow them to live a dignified and reasonably comfortable retirement. Now, the failure of target-dated funds, which were passed as part of the 2006 Pension Protection Act, was partly due to the opaqueness. In other words, people really didn't know what they had. They were automatically, incidentally, put into a target-dated fund, but they had no idea what it meant. And so people who turned 65 in 2009, who thought that that their target-dated funds would have them largely or entirely in government bonds, were very surprised to learn that in some cases 80% of the money was still invested in stocks. And so they took a bath along with everyone else. Another failure of target-dated funds was lack of standardization, and it was exposure to extreme risk from a rapid market decline. Now, our bonds have been proposed as a way, as an innard for for the auto IRA, and we proposed something similar, but something that will give the worker an opportunity of getting really a much more comfortable retirement. And that's RS Plus, Real Savings Plus. And what Real Savings Plus does is it provides a guarantee to workers. And the guarantee is you cannot lose a cent of your contribution, whether the contribution comes from your money or an employer's match or a saver's credit. And not only that, not only can you not lose a cent, you cannot lose anything to inflation, and that is guaranteed as part of RS Plus. So at the very least, if the Dow Jones went to zero, you guarantee that you will get out every penny that you and every match has put in. But in addition, this is what makes it interesting, it provides a very likely upside potential because it invests partly in common stocks, an index of common stocks. The difference isn't trivial, as this one shows. It can amount to 4 to 5 times that of the R bond over 40 years. And it provides the principal guarantee provided by many insurance companies to upscale investors, but at a tiny fraction of the cost. And essentially, it costs the U.S. taxpayers nothing at all, which hopefully will make it attractive in the current, at the current time. How does this work? Well, let me explain how it works. Lisa spoke of a worker who puts in $1,000 a year. Total of $1,000 could be partly due to the saver's credit. And the $1,000, what we do is the $1,000 is taken automatically. It's all based on a mathematical algorithm just in the computer. And an amount of that $1,000 is put into TIPS, Treasury Inflation Protected Securities. And it is put into TIPS so that the worker will have, at the end of, say, 30 years of work, will have that $1,000 in TIPS back. And since TIPS are fully protected against inflation, what it means is the worker is guaranteed to get their contribution back fully adjusted for inflation. But TIPS tend to pay a real rate of interest. Some of you may know the very first ever Treasury auction of 30-year TIPS was yesterday, and it came out at 2.22% real. If a worker puts in $1,000 to buy $1,000 TIPS 30 years from now, they only need to put in $552. The other $448 is put into the S&P 500, which allows it to grow. On page 8 of your briefing paper, there is a chart. This one is condensed, but basically what it shows is $1,000 goes in, you buy $552 in TIPS, you buy $448 in the S&P 500. You do this every year, and at the end of 30 years, you'll have $72,818 in TIPS, and you'll have $61,447 in S&P for a total of $134,295. Okay, to wind up, what we did was we said, okay, so we have a plan for workers, totally automatic, very, very, very low cost, because all we're doing is buying treasuries, which are essentially costless, and S&P 500, which you can now buy in an ETF for 8 basis points, 8/100ths of 1%. So it's a very, very inexpensive automated thing to do. But the question is, how does this compare to an R bond? So what we did was we compared RS Plus to an R bond, and to make it a little fairer, we gave R bond a little boost. We said, these R bonds are going to be inflation-protected R bonds. They're going to be TIPS R bonds. So the question is, on one hand, we put all of our money into TIPS, and on the other hand, we put in enough money in TIPS to guarantee, at the very worst, people get their money back, and then put all of the rest of it into S&P 500. And what happens? Well, the way to do that is you run what's called a Monte Carlo. And a Monte Carlo takes your variables, takes inflation, the rate of return on tips, the rate of return on S&P 500, and it varies the three variables, and it takes it through 1,000 replications. And so what we did was we compared tips to it, and let me just move this over here. And here are the results. And what the results show is that in 40 years, RS Plus will end up with an expected value of $523,405. The R bond would have about a quarter of that, $111,708. Then the other neat thing that a Monte Carlo does is it says, well, there's always a chance that, the day before you retire, right before you get the gold watch for 40 years, that the S&P 500 is going to collapse. And we've seen that there's a fat tail distribution, that these things happen. What's the probability? The probability that the RS Plus is going to beat the R bond out of 1,000 replications is 98.8%. So there is a tiny, tiny, tiny probability that it won't, but if it doesn't, it's probably going to do almost as well, and at the very least, there is no terrible downside. At the very least, if everything else collapses in life, you get your contributions back.
Thank you so much. I told you this would be a painless way to learn finance and what a Monte Carlo simulation is. So now you have your cliff notes to RS Plus. But I'm going to ask Christina Martin-Fervita to come on up from ARC to give us a different perspective on how consumers are thinking of these questions of automatic and simple.
Sure. Thank you. Well, first I want to say Nancy must be doing something right because we do know the savings rate is increasing. So it's either people are scared or you're a brilliant social marketer. At ARP, we're obviously a cornerstone of our advocacy work is looking for policies that can support financial security in the retirement years. And the cornerstone of that will always be, and I'm looking at Deb as I said, is Social Security, obviously. We will always have that be our number one item on the policy agenda for retirement security. But we know that Social Security alone, even though millions and millions of workers retire with that as their only source of income in retirement, Social Security alone is not really going to give you the level of income that folks are really hoping to have and really should have when they retire. And most of us in this room are lucky enough, I think most of us in this room are probably lucky enough to have an opportunity to save at work for retirement. Maybe we don't all take advantage of that, but we do know that 78 million workers do not have a workplace savings plan, and that is something that worries us at ARP quite a lot. A lot of those 78 million workers are young. A lot of them are not. A lot of our members are working, and a lot of our members are working and they're not saving for their retirement. And so we've been looking for years for a policy that really levels the playing field and says to every worker in America, we know that a workplace savings plan is where the real guts of planning and saving for your retirement happens for that portion of your retirement income that's above and beyond Social Security. And we know that who gets to have access to a workplace savings plan has a lot to do with the size of your employer, how much you earn, and we know that a lot of those 78 million workers are women, and they're members of different groups that have traditionally been shut out of a lot of the perks of higher income employment. And I'm looking at my colleague Amy Matsui. I spent 10 years at the National Women's Law Center. For myself personally, I have to say that this idea is one that's particularly important to me on a personal level because I know so many women are not in a job where they have a 401k or where they have a defined benefit plan and they don't have that kind of access. So we've been looking for an idea that addresses that disparity, and years ago we joined up with Mark and with David John from Heritage, and we've been big fans for this and for other reasons, but we've been big fans of this proposal for a long time, and we're very excited because we really do believe this is the year that we're going to get this enacted. But, you know, as Nancy pointed out, it's a tough economy, and we're mindful of that, and we really wanted to probe, well, where are, you know, these 78 million workers, many of whom are probably right now wondering, you know, when's their next paycheck going to come? Are they going to be able to keep their job? Many of them may not be employed. We wanted to test attitudes about this plan, especially in this climate. Were folks really ready for an automatic workplace savings plan if they had never had access to one before? And I think that a little bit of what we want to do is walk through what we found and how delighted we were to see that really people are ready. They really do want to save. I mean, Lou, to your point, the appetite's always there. The spirit is willing. The flesh is weak. So we want to have the access, but we need for it to be automatic. And this plan is so simple and easy to understand. It's so transparent. It lets people have some confidence in what it is that they're getting themselves into. And I think that those are all features that have really led to very, very high polling numbers when we've tested this, not just with our own members, but with younger individuals as well. So we've done survey work repeatedly for many years in a row now. Last summer was the last time we did some survey work. I'm sure we're renewing some of that this year. But what we found, even in the throes of this recession, what we found is that you get a very, very high level of support for this proposal. 78% across the board, 78% of those who are asked, should employers be required to offer a savings plan at work for retirement, no contribution required, no fancy bells and whistles, just an opportunity to save through an IRA. 78% say yes, and then when you break down that support, what's to us particularly encouraging is that the support is equally deep regardless of political affiliation, age group, income, or regional disparities where we knew we were polling this. So I'll walk you through a little bit of that just to give you a flavor of how there cannot possibly be an excuse, since we're in the Russell building, that there cannot possibly be an excuse for not doing this and doing it soon and doing it with bipartisan support, because there is no one. And we were very honest. This was a bipartisan poll. We were hard on our questions. This was by no means a push poll. There just cannot be any reason not to do this when you've got this level of support. 84% of the Democrats that we polled said they supported the idea. 76% of the Republicans we polled said they supported the idea. 84% of younger individuals, these are 25 to 34-year-olds, were very interested in this idea and strongly supported it. 73% of seniors, most of whom are, frankly, this is, the ones who are retired, this is not for them. They were very supportive because they recognized the opportunity that was there for their children and their grandchildren. 80% of those that we surveyed with income below $40,000 were attracted to this idea, supported it, was something that they would be interested in participating in. But equally, 82% of those above $75,000 thought that it was an interesting idea, would love to participate, and supported it. So to us, it's astonishing that really there's what's not to like? There's nobody who doesn't like this. To be truly fair, we then tested a lot of messages about what was wrong with this. Well, it's going to be tough on small businesses. If they could do this, they would have done it already. Where's the money going to go? What happened? Your money's at risk. We tested 10 or 12 messages, and then we asked again, so is this an attractive idea? Would you support this? And there was no erosion in support. There was no erosion in support. Now, that's not to say that there aren't real details that need to get worked out. And again, I would really, say to Lou, I think that we agree. One of our big concerns has got to be, there need to be choices, not too many choices, because the behavior research tells us too many choices makes people choose nothing at all. But if someone doesn't want to make a choice or doesn't feel that they know how to make a choice, that default really does need to be, Lou, as you pointed out, and I think Mark, you all have spent so much time thinking through this. It has to be a default that has really a low fee structure and frankly a low risk investment because of all the reasons that Lou already pointed out. We're mostly talking about individuals that aren't going to have a lot to put away every year, and every little bit for them is going to count if it's at risk. We also don't want it to be a situation where you're saving a little bit, but you don't have a real shot at building a little wealth. Because that's not fair. That's not what this is about. This is about leveling the playing field and ensuring everyone has a shot at building up some kind of a nest egg to supplement, the base of their Social Security income in retirement. We also know that we need it to be transparent because that inspires confidence. You need to know what you're getting yourself into, and that's there's a lot of other pieces to that agenda for us. We favor transparency and disclosure. We favor having clarity about what is the fiduciary duty of brokers. Some of these pieces are up right now in the financial regulatory reform legislation. Some of them are in other legislation that the Ed and Labor Committee has already voted out on the House side. So there's a broader agenda, but it all goes to this point that part of the appeal here is it's a very simple idea, and you have to have simplicity and transparency to inspire confidence in you savers. And part of this is that we need to make sure that we're not inadvertently disadvantaging populations that maybe haven't saved before. This is maybe their first real foray into some big savings, and we know that there's a world out there of policies that are then driven by asset tests. And that's a conversation that we've had at other Aspen roundtables, that we want to make sure that we're not inadvertently creating barriers by chasing this dream that everyone should have, an opportunity to save and hopefully encourage them to do so. So, I'm mindful that it's past 1 o'clock. Those are my really quick points. I cannot underscore enough, we really think this is such an important first step to ensure that everyone has an opportunity, a real opportunity, not a paper opportunity, to save for their retirement. And we cannot wait for this to really get rolling. We know the legislation is imminently about to be introduced. We know how hard Mark and others at Treasury have worked to work out some of these, as we said, some of the details are really where this gets complicated. And that work's going to really pay off. We're very, very confident this is something that's going to roll ahead this year and get enacted.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Christina. John.
I'll stand here. I can carry the room, but I don't need the mic. My name is John Tippett. I am the president of the North Island Credit Union in San Diego. It's a great time to be here in Washington. This is the town I grew up in, so I just get a kick out of coming back here. It's also great for timing. The America Saves campaign has another manifestation that I'm particularly aware of. Ourselves and many other credit unions have a military attachment. Ours to the Navy there in San Diego and the Marines as well. And many credit unions there in San Diego County are very much involved this time frame in what's called military saves, one of the tangents of the America Saves campaign. So it's great to be here. I enjoyed Lewis's remarks. I digressed, some of them may have had other food you were working on. So he mentioned the gold watch, and somehow the Johnny Cash song came back about Ole. You remember Ole was going to get his. I hope when people retire, they're not looking for Ole. I hope they are pleased with their retirement. 7 years ago, Lisa came to me. I was running the American Airlines Federal Credit Union, and she explained to me the mission and the vision she had for trying to help more Americans save. I was thrilled to join with her at a larger panel of others who were CEOs of financial institutions and others to talk about saving for retirement, saving for education, saving to start a small business, saving for down payment on a home. We talked about different vehicles that might be available, starting with children's accounts or with particular other kinds of specialized accounts. One of them, though, was about IRAs and what's the right and best and most potential that can be done with IRAs, because it has been a very good retirement and savings vehicle for lots of Americans. Hasn't been maximized, and so I'm pleased to be here today when we're talking about how to maximize it. And it was a great match, I thought, what IFS was working on. It was a great match for what credit unions do. Most credit unions were formed, excuse me, that would just be the time. Most credit unions were formed with something in their early charters. There was a phrase something like encouraging habits of thrift. And I go back to my childhood, and I had these little 25-cent stickers that I put inside of my little savings bond book, and I went and bought my savings bond. Most of you are not old enough to remember those days. But encouraging habits of thrift from the very earliest time forward. Here, Jim, turn that off. Anyway, I thought the credit union mission was a nice match for what Lisa wanted to do, and so I was pleased to be a part of this. Let me mention 2 or 3 things that haven't been mentioned. One, the genius of compounding, the miracle of compounding. Everything that you can do that has this 30, 40-year effect has a great benefit of compounding. We need to do this, and this is an opportunity to take advantage of that. We need to worry about safety. I think what they have proposed here has got some great safety elements, both in terms of the limited range of investments and risk, but also in terms of how it would be administered at a very low cost. We need to always, though, reinforce a principle, and I think this is a terribly important one, and I like this, what they proposed, and that is an ownership stake in America. Everybody who saves ought to be concerned about the health of corporations in America, the health of businesses in America. If they have a piece of ownership, they're going to care about the success of this American capitalistic model. And I think that's far more important than thinking they're just going to get a constant check from the government. So I'm pleased that this proposal has that kind of an element attached to it. I would also suggest that the savings that people can do and compound and take advantage of tips, etc., as they've done, ought to be automatic. That is the most simple, basic skill of savings, is just making it a habit. There are lots of habits we have in our lives, but this is one of the very good habits we could have and should encourage. And lastly, from a credit union standpoint, we like to serve people. Modest means people, people who are working people in America. This is a great match for the credit union mission, the credit union vision of how we serve people. I think for many of us, in fact, we serve a lot of small businesses. And as you serve small businesses, you see that they might be willing to help their employees save. So I think making the payroll deduction a piece of the small business model. We would be glad to walk into our small business clients and tell them how to do this. And lastly, and not mentioned there today, but one of the things that I think the credit union model allows this to help. A lot of this group that we're talking about, generalized, they move from job to job. They may have 10, 20, or 30 jobs in the course of a working career. And one place that they might be able to depend on all of that 30 or 40 years might be their credit union, where they can direct their IRA savings to, regardless of which employer they're working for at a time. So anyway, I'm pleased to be here, Lisa. I'm proud of what you're doing. I applaud it and encourage the success of this program. Thank you very much.
Appreciate, and John, thank you for being quick, too. You've heard our themes: automatic, nest eggs on autopilot, and you've heard our hopes. And so it's time for some questions while we're all still here before. Yes?
Yeah, great class. However, I have a point that you made. As individuals accumulate assets, and how that then impacts on other kinds of scholarships or whatever, and what kind of mechanisms can be put in place so that the legislation, the policies, whatever develops, takes care of that, and then it can add more people who would be interested and not be so concerned about, well, if I save $2, then I can use it for my scholarship or whatever. I just want to...
For those of you who didn't hear that question, it's really this question of the asset tests that are still in this society for lower income people, which disallow benefits in your daily life if you're saving 30 years, 40 years in the future. And I see lots of heroes in the room, CFED, New America, EARN, others who've been on this theme of how do we correct the asset tests. We're in the right building for this to kind of hear the message. And I think Christina had the right point that as we push for American dream-like policies around ownership, we need to make sure that somebody saving their first $20 who may still be eligible for child care or a food stamp not be penalized for that, so that these things need to work in concert. I know most of the advocates for these kind of policies have been virulent advocates for these kind of changes in asset tests, this whole IDA field that started that, questions which Camille comes from, has made real progress, and I know they've had to go state by state in these things. The hope would be, since we have an administration who's looking generally at federal policy, that we could capture a few of those, and that the HHS folks will talk to the Treasury folks. Note to Treasury, Mark, thank you for raising the important point, because it is a conflict in the very group we're trying to assist. Other questions? Yes?
I just have a question. So my understanding of this is you pick a date in the future, 10, 20, 30 years, and you have a part go into a stock fund, and then part buys tips that go down to maturity, and then it matures at your retirement date. So when you retire, you have two assets in your portfolio. One is S&P 500, and the other asset, because all your tips have matured, is actually cash. So cash is a good thing to have on hand when you want to spend. You want to buy a boat when you retire, it's a good thing to have. But if you're going to reinvest that money, you're subjecting yourself to a lot of interest rate risk. So if you're going to buy a portfolio of bonds on that day, or you're going to buy an annuity on that day, it's actually very risky. So my question is, how are you thinking the money is going to be used in retirement? And then before you answer that, there's one comment, which is, you're just clarifying comment. The guarantee that you have on the principal is really guaranteed for one day, the day you retire. You don't guarantee that the day before you retire or the day after. The guarantee is, if you stay in this until you retire, then your tips account is equal to the real value.
And I think everybody heard that question, so we're in a good room about really the next briefing we will do, which is on the annuity aspect of life, which hopefully Debbie will invite us back for that. But Lou, please address
I think the question you raise is an extremely important question, and I wish I could say that I've given that some thought. I really haven't. We've just been focused on getting to retirement. In other words, getting the nest egg at retirement. Now, what happens after retirement is a very, very, very important question. And you're absolutely right. It all happens on one day, and then if you're going to reinvest it on that day, you take a lot of interest rate risk. And, I think as Lisa said, the next thing we have to say is once people kind of understand that this is a good accumulation vehicle, then the next thing we have to say is, okay, how do we take care of longevity risk? How do we enable people to work this into annuities purchased, say, at different times so that we are spreading the basis risk that we're taking at any given time? And we really haven't considered that yet, but you're giving us sort of a good start to the next things that we have to be considering.
Yes, all the way back.
So is the Aspen Institute's position that the RS Plus should be provided by private financial services providers, that the government is going to say this is what this product must have in it in order to qualify as a default? I mean, how do you see this working in practice?
Okay, I think you're asking
a lot of private institutions do have certain products that we'll get to where you're going. But
you're asking two questions that I think are very good questions. The first one is, can the private sector offer this product? And the answer is absolutely, of course. We really hope that many institutions that are now offering IRAs, and virtually every financial intermediary offers an IRA, we hope that they would offer this as well. Our feeling is that it's a simple product. It should be relatively low cost for them. But of course, nobody does anything for free. So we're kind of hoping that if their actual cost of this product is 5-10 basis points a year, that the markup is commensurate, and so they end up offering a low-cost product. The second part of the question?
I think the other piece is, while any institution could do this today, with some exceptions, because there aren't 40-year tips right now, this is a proposition to be included in the policy if the policy that's being proposed, and we haven't seen any legislation yet, includes default options. We would propose that what we're talking about, Real Savings Plus, be considered as one of the kind of defaults. So it's both, yes, private sector can do this on its own, you know, if you're a cab driver, you got to be able to get an RS Plus, or when an automatic IRA policy is written and chooses what is automatic, what is default, that this be one of the contenders. So that's part of the proposition.
Okay.
And Mark?
Just as a footnote to what Lisa said, by way of clarification, that second category, default investment, as we've been conceiving of the automatic IRA, that too would be a private sector
yes.
Investment, at least presumptively. If there may not need to be any fallback with that too, whether it's a default or whether it's not a default.
Got it. Right here, and then Michael, I'll go to you.
I was wondering about the default investments, why it should be anything other than treasury bonds? Because don't you have, when you have like the government picking winners among different investments?
I think the only reason we're proposing this is after 40 years of buying inflation-protected treasury bonds, you would end up with a shade over, you'd end up with $111,000. Okay? In 40 years with RS Plus, you'd end up with 4 times that amount. And so I think what Christina said is that people deserve an opportunity and a strong likelihood of coming out with a reasonable nest egg and a reasonable income in retirement. And it's sort of like you invest for 40 years and you put your money in a checking account or in a savings account. You have no chance of really any growth. And what we're saying is, yes, put your money, at least a portion of it, into investing in America's future, America's corporations, and it's very likely you're going to do much, much better. And with RS Plus, there's no likelihood that you're going to go broke. Yeah, oh, I'm sorry, and Lisa reminds me, of course, that when you have an index fund, you're not picking one name, one company over another. You're basically investing in the entire market basket. The S&P 500 may only be 500 companies, but it has something like 80 or 85% of the total market capitalization of the United States. So you basically are buying into the system of private enterprise and its growth in the United States.
Mike Calvary, yes.
Yeah, Mike Calvary, the New America Foundation. The emphasis with the RS Plus, a lot of the emphasis was on how the compounding of equity can be done relatively safely. You can capture that, which is great. It's something that wasn't mentioned explicitly, and I'm wondering, it seems to be another advantage, but let me know if I'm missing it, is that this seems to build in a kind of a standardized version of what's good about target date or life cycle funds, which is, like I said, you guys are emphasizing like, okay, the first dollars you put in when you're in your 20s, but if you're, say, 60 years old, then each additional dollar you're putting in at 60 is going to go 90 or 95% into a TIPS fund, right? And so essentially this is automatically a standardized, it seems to me it's almost automatically a standardized form of target date fund.
That's an excellent point, and I think the advantage that we see over target date is that it's very explicit. It doesn't have to, you don't have to say, well, this particular target dated fund, is it 100 years minus your age or 110 minus your age, or is it just whatever the company chose to offer? This one is very rigidly algorithmic. It's mathematical and it's easy to understand. You can look at the spreadsheet.
You have a point of view.
The asset allocation depends on when you start saving, the pattern of your contributions, how well you did in the stock market. Those things determine your asset allocation. I don't know many models that would say that should determine your asset allocation. So in the base sample of 40 years, at retirement, you're 60% equity. I mean, if you get 9% every year, which is unlikely. But this does not, contributions ratchet down. But your asset allocation is in many cases, if you assume a flat equity, you get pretty much a flat 60-40 or 50-50 or 30-30. It depends on when you start, what your returns are in the market. That determines your asset allocation.
And you bring up a very good point, and you know, this is the second very good point that you've brought up of things that are really, you know, intermediate or advanced RS Plus that we haven't gotten to yet. And one of them is you're 65 years old and the market's gone up very nicely, and you're 2/3 in S&P 500. Should there be the opportunity, automatically or volitionally, should there be a one-way valve in which you can take the at-risk money and as you approach a later age, port it over to the treasuries? And we think this is an area that we are working on, but it's you know, as I said, it's kind of step two.
We have found the hottest room in the Russell building, and it is 1:30. I hope those of you who didn't get to ask our question will come on up to the even hotter podium area. But please join me in thanking this incredible panel for your best on